Major funding for these broadcasts has been provided by grants from New York Community Bank, AmTrust Title Insurance Company, Perfect Building Maintenance, M&T Bank, Customers Bank, Marks Paneth LLP, Capital One Bank, Collins Building Services, Meridian Capital Group. Additional support has been provided by grants from AKA Hotel Residences Corman Communities, Ariel Property Advisors, Amarant Bank, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, Chase Commercial Mortgage Lending, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Citizens Bank, Dime Community Bank, Douglaston Development Levine Builders, Flushing Bank, Friedman LLP, Handro Properties LLC, Handler Real Estate Organization, Hodges Ward Elliott INC, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, John Casamatides Red Apple Group, Keysight Capital Partners, Matone Group, New Banks, Newmark Knight Frank, Ocean First Bank, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rockefeller Group, Rosewood Realty Services, Stonehenge NYC, SVN CPEX Real Estate Services, Tierra CRG, the Meringer Family Foundation, and these friends. New York City office market. It's shinier than my apple. It's positive. It's growing. Things are looking great. So today I've assembled this group of business leaders to provide their insight on the office market in New York City. My guests include my favorite guest for many years, who's been with me many times over the past 19 seasons, Bruce Mosler, chairman of Global Brokerage, Cushman & Wakefield. Bill Elder, returning after a couple of years, who is the Executive Vice President and Managing Director at RXR Realty. Brian Steinwurzel, who's also returning to our show, who is the co-CEO of GFP Real Estate. And last but not least, my fellow with a beard, Jeremy Moss, Executive Vice President, Leasing at Silverstein Properties. You know, we were in the green room before, and we were saying, when did we believe, or could we believe, that the rents have reached such a high level in New York? Bruce?
You know, it's always difficult to project forward and vision what rents will go to in a city as robust as New York, the financial capital of the world. But I remind us that, taking a quick look backwards, this will be the third consecutive year that we will have lease up of more than 30 million square feet. That's not been done in modern time. It tells you about the robustness of the marketplace. It tells you that the tech component is now the most significant part of the pie chart when you look at the breakdown of the industry bases in New York. These are all new additions that are driving rent up every day. And you look at marketplaces like Midtown South, as an example. It is the tightest market in the country, not just in Manhattan. Can't get space to grow if you're a tech sector company. You look at downtown, which is now year over year up 73%, largely because of a couple of big deals, but nevertheless up. You look at the fact that we've added new development, meaning new projects to the city, which had an average age of building north of 75 years. And you add it all up together and you say, maybe it is reasonable to say rents are going to be the highest we've ever seen and continue to push up.
Which is what happened at the end of the third quarter.
Precisely right.
Over there with the rents.
Precisely.
Now, Jeremy was saying to me before in the other room, there were companies that didn't exist 10 years ago. Let's talk about some of the tenants who have gone to Lower Manhattan over the last couple of years,
Sure.
your properties and so on.
Most recently, Uber, taking 300,000 feet. I mean, a few years ago they had no footprint of consequence in New York City. Spotify is a similar story. They allowed us to finish up 4 World Trade Center. They took the top of the building, about 500,000 square feet. And even going back to the anchor tenant for 3 World Trade Center, Group M, company I had never heard of, but apparently handles about 1/3 of the global digital advertising, walked in with 4,500 employees.
But you know, if you look at your own history at Silverstein, when you went over there, you never expected to see rents that you've achieved in downtown.
I think we figured the rents were going to get there because we were providing something that didn't really exist. We were providing new buildings, which we all know are very difficult to add to the New York City marketplace for a lot of reasons, including land costs, construction costs. I think what we didn't know is who was going to occupy them and pay those rents.
Right.
Getting back to that, we designed those buildings for financial service companies. We assumed it was going to be finance. It was a no-brainer. And it turns out that most of the occupancy is by these fast-growing technology and technology-related companies.
Let's talk about Midtown South. I think one of the greatest things that your family and the company has done is the repositioning of these older buildings, okay? Because as Bruce and everybody's been saying, we have old properties over here, but some of the old properties had to be repositioned. Let's discuss some of that.
Sure. I mean, I think what's happening in the market is we're fortunate that there's a lot of businesses that are coming to New York and they're competing for talent. And what they're realizing is that they need to have space that will draw the talent to them. And that a lot of the talent likes to be in brand new glass and steel towers, but a lot of them want to be in old manufacturing with exposed wood beams, tall ceilings, and having a rustic look. And so what we've been fortunate is to have owned buildings in those neighborhoods and also to have continued to acquire them and repositioning them to suit those companies that are trying to attract that talent. And it seems like there's a price point throughout the market for each of these tiers. And so we're trying to appeal to the organizations that want to have that vintage look.
So we're also talking about smaller tenancy in many cases.
Yeah, I mean, our portfolio is roughly 11 million square feet, and we have, call it 2,500 companies. So our average company is 4,000 square feet. Our largest one is 500,000 square feet. Our smallest one's, let's say, 1,000. But by and large, we're a small to medium-sized office provider.
So let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla who's sitting next to you. Okay. No, in the positive way. You have how many?
He meant your buildings.
Buildings, 18 million?
18 and a half in the city, yeah.
Okay, so
24 in the tri-state area.
But let's talk about the 18 and a half, what you're doing and what's changes and the renovations and the changes that you've done, like at 237, which is a testimony of a great project.
Yeah, so just to go back to I think the overall concept of rent growth in the city, I guess I'm saying I'm disappointed that it didn't get here quicker. When you look at prior cycles that we've known, we've missed out on those tremendous rent pops that happened in 06 and 07 and years before that, where rents would appreciate 40, 50% in that brief period of time. And so I think when you look at that, I think maybe we all expected that at some point in time in this news cycle, which never happened. It's been a gradual kind of growth over the last 10 or 11 years. I think that's caused by a bunch of different things, but I think equilibrium in the market is probably the chief cause of that. But now we're differentiating the market in a couple of different ways. New product is hugely desirous and in demand, and getting pricing that's 90% more than the Midtown market, right? So people will pay for modern, column-free, efficient workplaces. You look at Spotify, right? We met with them. They were a tenant of ours. We desperately wanted to expand them. It's 626. Didn't have the ability to do it. And I figured they'd go to a building that would have like character to that. The guy who ran the company, who took Netflix public, was all about the modern, kind of systems and environment. So you create I think a dichotomy here of new buildings or substantially renovated buildings, or you run the risk to some degree of functional obsolescence or a lower price point. So I think the market in that regard is staying in equilibrium because people still have choices. But you know, we take it upon ourselves. Every project's different. When we buy a building, everything's got a business plan. How do we want to restructure some of the deficiencies of this asset through a capital improvement program, amenity program, or both, to kind of build that value. And I think, you know, we all appreciate here.
You know, all three of you have made major capital improvements in some of your older properties, like 120 Broadway. Let's talk about what you're doing over there.
Yeah, so we undertook a $30 million capital program there that included a renovation of the lobby. We really wanted to restore it to its original accurate historic detail. So if you haven't, you should come take a look at it. And then we added a amenity on the top floors. We created a cafe, a bar, a restaurant with indoor and outdoor seating, which gets used for breakfast, lunch, and all of the tenants in the building can also use it for their own events.
Let's talk about, with regard to the amenity, the convenes. You know, I would be remiss if we didn't discuss the communal spaces, the amenity spaces, the WeWork, and the co-working. Let's talk about what's happening and what do you see with the change now that WeWork has had its financial difficulties in New York?
Well, so let's start by, I think we'd all agree, if you don't have some sort of amenity in your buildings, it may be, you know, to your detriment, because that's kind of one of the boxes that needs to get checked by especially the big users. Not good enough to be across the street or next door, it's got to be inside. And so we embrace that from an early standpoint, and we partner with companies like Convene to help us deliver that. And then I think when you look at the most modern build out that Convene's done at 530 Fifth Avenue, which we own, it'll, I don't know if you've ever walked through it. It is absolutely mind-blowing what they've done to their workplace. You come in, it almost looks like a vacation resort. And then there's wellness on top of that. There's steam rooms, there's nap rooms. There's actually a doctor on the premises for health maintenance, and then enterprise units surrounding that, in addition to the conference business that they have. And it's really well done. And just the whole integration of, you know, these 4 floors, interconnecting stairway, you're in a completely different environment.
Is it owned by RXR and operated by Convene?
We own the real estate. They're on a traditional lease there.
Brian, you have a lot of Notel in a number of your properties, right?
We don't. We have 2 Notels in 2 buildings.
Okay.
It's a very small part of our portfolio. But I think what WeWork has shown us, and I think Notel to some extent, is that there is a tremendous amount of demand for that kind of product. The big question, and I think this is playing out, unfortunately, to WeWork's detriment, is that the companies are not willing to pay enough for it that it justifies the cost of producing it. So while in some of these buildings under some models, it does make sense to build out these amenities, and we have a new project, a 1 million square foot building, formerly known as 7 Hanover, now 100 Pearl, which will have amenities very similar to what you're describing. And the organizations that we're targeting, we think will pay up for those amenities. But by and far, in the rest of our portfolio, the organizations aren't willing to pay enough for us to develop this project.
Yeah, but going back, I mean, maybe 10, 15 years ago, you always rented to co-working or flexible office companies. There were certain people who were in there in the same way as the Silver Suites, you know, who would have space and they would sublease it out to other tenants. It wasn't what we see today in the co-working or the flexible space,
right?
But it was, you know, shared office with a conference room.
Sure. We've had traditional office suite companies, and we've had some incubator companies for fashion or tech or others. And you know, the concept for us was, especially in the incubating companies, was to be able to have organizations that wanted to grow. They would grow into our portfolio. So these were opportunities for them to rent a small office or a fashion suite showroom, and then be able to grow as their product, you know, took off.
I think taking just a half step back, we should be careful not to combine issues. And you raised a very important point about the changing landscape of flex space. As it relates to flex space, and I agree with Brian, first and foremost, there's a need in the marketplace. Companies with large portfolios would have wanted for years the ability to have flexible space, to take a shorter term versus a longer term lease. Add that to gap law change, which required that you now bring the entire lease on balance sheet day one, and you had this demand that was pent up that was now being met by the major players in the co-working flex space environment that has a viable business model, in my opinion. And that business model will play out for years to come. We will see businesses avail themselves of it. And that will continue, I think, to be a part of our marketplace. It might not grow as fast. It might be more steady state growth than we've seen versus extraordinary growth in the past couple of years, but it will be a part of our marketplace. Separate from that is the amenitization of space, which every core company and core industry today requires for their workforce. Coming back to the millennial workforce, this generation, now the largest part of the workforce, the millennial generation, wants to live in an environment that's 24/7 live, work, play. The CEO now no longer dictates where a company goes. A company goes where its workforce wants to be in an environment that they want to enjoy, and that includes the amenitization of space to the extent of conferencing, workout facilities, health care. Those are some of the many.
You've been in the flex space business with Silver Suites in the Trade Center. Have you thought about expanding it into buildings like 120 or some of the other Silverstein properties?
Yeah. I'll tell you what we've found to be hugely valuable. And I was on the way in here having a conversation with one of our tenants about using our Silver Suites for this very purpose. Companies that are moving into our building are often growing so quickly that they need space today. They can't wait. So if we have the ability to give them 50, 100 seats and relieve them of that pressure and allow that CEO to focus on the business and not worry about real estate, we've done them a huge service. But this doesn't just happen with companies coming from outside. It happens with companies within the portfolio. They acquire another company, and in order to digest that, they need some temporary space. So it has become an amenity unto itself.
How is the office market in Brooklyn and Queens?
So in Long Island City, our theory when we buy in these buildings is that we had tenants in Manhattan that could no longer afford Manhattan prices. And so we acquired buildings, we renovated them, not to the same extent that we do a Manhattan property, but we delivered a very nice product that was at a discount to Manhattan prices. And what we've seen is small and medium-sized companies coming to Long Island City. It has been slower than we expected, but we're fortunate that we have leased up all of our buildings there. The other thing that I think about Long Island City is we have a life science project that's going on.
Which is something I wanted to discuss also.
With King Street Properties, and I think that opportunity is significant. Long Island City, to us, looks just like Cambridge did 25 years ago.
Yeah, interesting.
And so we've made a sizable investment in that market and in that industry and trying to bring it to New York.
I think for us in Long Island City, Standard Motors product building, we've had very little vacancy, smaller suites.
Right, but you were there beginning.
Yeah.
When there were fewer spaces, there were conversions, but you were one of the earlier conversions.
And I will tell you, I think if we had larger blocks, we would have filled them pretty quickly. I mean, the velocity there in some of these categories of lower pricing for firms coming out of Manhattan, it's a little easier to get to Long Island City from Manhattan as a partial reliever or full reliever. And so I think you've seen some really big transactions with One Court Square and Tishman product and some of the other things that have actually done some pretty big leases there. So I think that market's a little bit more active, and Brooklyn is still active, but I think comparing the two, a little less active than Long Island City. And so 470 Vanderbilt, we're full now. So we had about 150,000 feet to lease up. That's now done. And then in 47 Hall, that's a full redevelopment, which we're probably half the way through. And what I like about that building, it appeals to a number of different types of tenancies. Small, amenities, larger footprint, and price points that are in the low to mid 40s and kind of tops out at 50. And you're not going to find that.
Coupled with you have the REIT benefits if a company is relocating over there, which would amount to another 10 or 12
But
dollars.
you look at Brooklyn and you think about the labor force that's there. It's the largest labor force that actually commutes into Manhattan, right? And they're everything from lawyers and tech people and architects and but there's a huge population of really creative people. I think you'll see some of the larger tech firms start to co-locate.
We were talking about life science. I know you have one property, I think is a life science that you did with Taconic on the west side. You're doing some
And we've embraced it early on. I took one of our internal task force. We went up to Cambridge for a couple of days and kind of went through, studied it. It's shocking that it's not a larger presence here. I think it's coming.
Massive in Boston.
But you look at that Cambridge model,
yep.
It'll blow your mind.
But I think the commitment with King Street and the commitment also with Alexandria, because Alexandria took over the Pfizer building over there, that either they'll demolish it or utilize the building for life science. I think life science is one of the areas that's growing. And
the labor force is here, right? And so that's the most attractive thing, is that getting people to either locate here or that are here, that's a key piece.
And you also have to take into consideration what's coming out of Cornell Tech, which is both, the limited amount of office buildings on the east side, near Cornell Tech, which is perfect for Long Island City and so on. What about the new construction plan for the far west side? What's happening over there, Bruce? I'm talking about the ones in planning, the Sphere and some of the other properties, the Boston properties.
Yep. Look, I think there's still significant demand. Let's understand that new construction has several real advantages in the sense of efficiency. This column-free, floor-to-ceiling glass, typically larger ceiling heights, is very attractive to the millennial generation. When you can take a business, and I'm not going to name names, that can go from 900,000 feet to 600,000 feet and add bodies, that's an awfully attractive and appealing circumstance, particularly on the economics. And then add to it that now the far west side is no longer a emerging market. It's emerged. You have the major players in finance, the major players in technology, the major players in almost every industry.
I think the biggest problem that you have on the far west side is it hasn't been amenitized enough with regard to restaurants or hotels, even though they're building, but there isn't that number over there.
That's true to a degree. The argument that I would make is just as is happening downtown with our friends and colleagues who are building the World Trade Center sites. You will see really a master plan community. There's nothing that Jeremy isn't developing that doesn't have a retail component to it or a residential component to it. So, I would argue that what you're seeing on the far west side, like downtowners, are master plan
if you want
communities.
to take into consideration the meatpacking area or the Midtown South, which you've been involved with for years, and Starrett Lehigh, when RXR bought Starrett Lehigh, this was
it's embedded there.
It was a different neighborhood.
It was a different neighborhood, and Tammy was not a term.
Right.
That's right.
In 2011,
That's right.
12, and so we knew that this was a smart investment. And I can't tell you that we sat here and said the yards are going to be developed and it's going to be quite the way it is now, but the neighborhood's completely transformed. The building's transformed.
Okay, so what about north of 96th Street? Why haven't we seen the development in Harlem? There is still space over there, okay? The trains are over there. Right now, the 2nd Avenue subway's up to 96th Street. It's going to go further later on.
I think it's seen a lot of residential development.
There has been the residential development, there's no question. Yeah. But the commercial development, the only one that was planned was at 1800 Park Avenue on the college site of the podiatric school, where originally they thought that Major League Baseball would have gone in over there as the lead tenant. And nothing has taken place over the last 16 years. So that's a market over there. Now, the other question is, what about where Fisher Brothers had planned with Solo near the NYU campus, which is another perfect location for life science and so on? Where do you see that?
There's some really great things that have happened east side that we haven't touched on. One is the fact that no small thing that JP Morgan has announced that they're staying. They're bringing this building down, they're going to rebuild the building, and at the end of the day, in the interim, they have, effectively speaking, leased an awful lot of vacancy that might have been. But the point of the matter, this was an enormously important announcement to anchor the east side. One Vanderbilt is a enormously important success story because locationally, you can't beat it. The fact that it is going to be fully leased in a very short period of time speaks volumes. The upzoning of the east side, while not inexpensive, has positioned it for the future. as a place and location where you will see new development.
Look, I think
So
the
I'm
MTA,
very optimistic,
The MTA
if I
building
can.
on Madison Avenue, which is right across the street
Yeah.
from your property, is going to be redeveloped because
right.
it's
just
fortunate
timing.
that there's no tenant. So the benefit of not getting rid of the tenants over there, you have that over the situation. What you're doing right now with 550 Madison, I think, is a testament to a fantastic building.
Yeah, and again, that's one of these classic, just well-built, great buildings that's been reimagined, reinvented, and the activity proves that the recipe was right. So just to go back to the whole yards and Midtown, yeah, I think there was a point in time where a lot of people were starting to doubt the viability of Midtown in general. When J.P. Morgan Chase, I think they gave New York one of the greatest gifts in modern history. I really do, by planting a flag there that will be there for a very, very long time.
And I think the Midtown zoning, the rezoning, has been fantastic.
Fantastic.
No question.
It's helping the city over there with now that the Long Island Railroad's going to be coming in to Grand Central.
That's right.
The access over there, I think it's perfect. And New York City is doing well. And my apple is really shining, and it's really a good testament to the city and what's going on. Companies want to be here. They want to work, live, and operate. And it's great. And I'd like to thank my friends for being here. Bruce, Bill, Brian, Jeremy. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.